Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another video and today's topic is John Gill on Matthew 24:30. This video is another addition to a series that I have been doing for the past few months about notable theologians and what some people might call early church fathers throughout history who were not premillennialists. And the reason that I decided to do this is because many people in the comment section appeal to what they call the early church fathers or to early theologians, people throughout church history. And many people have made the claims that they were all premillennialists. And, well, Pete and Rachel Rue, in their book, The Return of Christ, Why Are We Still Waiting? They compiled a nice list of people who fall under those categories who were not premillennialists. And I've been sharing verses that they have made comments on, and they fall very far away from what most people imagine people in church history would have said about prophetic things. And that's because, since especially dispensationalism is so rampant, especially in the United States, most people think that's the only view that there is, and that it's actually a really recent view, which doesn't in itself mean that it's wrong, but it doesn't match scripture. And I go over that a lot in my channel. But let's first of all learn about who John Gill was before we read what he had to say about Matthew 24:30. John Gill was an English Baptist pastor, biblical scholar, and theologian who lived from 1697 to 1771. It says he was an English particular Baptist theologian, biblical scholar, and minister. He was born in Kettering, Northamptonshire, and attended Kettering Grammar School, where he mastered the Latin classics and learned Greek by age 11. He was also a self-taught who learned everything from logic to Hebrew, his love for the latter remaining throughout his life. So a very learned man, to say the least. So now let's read Matthew 24:30. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Now, most futurists will use this passage to describe a future coming in which Jesus is going to literally appear in the clouds for all to see. And let's just hear what John Gill had to say about this verse in particular. This actually comes from a commentary that he did on Matthew 24, and it was also mentioned in the book Matthew 24 Fulfilled by John Bray. Here is the quote. He shall appear not in person, but in the power of his wrath and vengeance on the Jewish nation, which will be a full sign and proof of his being come, as if they had seen him appear in person in the heavens. So, contrary to what many futurists believe, John Gill, he believed the same thing that I do, that this coming was not referring to something that was going to be visible, that Jesus was not going to appear in the clouds. And I actually have some examples of that. So in Isaiah 19:1, there's a reason that I believe that. In Isaiah 19:1, it says, "The oracle concerning Egypt, behold, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud, and is about to come to Egypt. The idols of Egypt will tremble at his presence, and the heart of the Egyptians will melt within them." Now, hopefully you can see that this Old Testament passage is referring to something figurative. The Lord riding in on a swift cloud symbolizes judgment. He was coming in judgment on Egypt, and it specifically says he is about to come to Egypt. So there are many examples throughout the Old Testament of the Lord, or I should say Yahweh, coming in judgment on nations, and he never came visibly, maybe visibly through armies, but he himself never appeared in the sky. I don't know. I have never met anyone who thinks that Yahweh was actually riding on a cloud into Egypt. So hopefully you understand that too. So the question is, why would that be any different in the New Testament? If all of Yahweh's comings, and there were many in the Old Testament, were comings in judgment, why would Jesus' coming be any different? And you might say to yourself, well, because in the Old Testament it was talking about the Father's coming, and now in the New Testament this is Jesus and his coming. Well, interestingly, what we see in John 5:19 is that Jesus said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise." So we have this verse here in which Jesus comes right out and says that he only does what he sees the Father doing, and that whatever the Father does, he does it likewise, meaning he does it in the same way. So if the Father came in judgment in the Old Testament and did not appear in the sky, or wasn't riding on a swift cloud, like with a little saddle, or like riding it like a motorcycle or something, then I think that it's safe to say that in the verse Matthew 24:30, when it says that the Son of Man is coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, that it's not referring to a visible coming. And what is it referring to again? I'm going to repeat it because I think this is important, because I think he's correct. Jesus shall appear not in person, but in the power of his wrath and vengeance on the Jewish nation, which will be a full sign and proof of his being come, as if they had seen him appear in person in the heavens. Jesus came in AD 70 in the destruction of Jerusalem, and they certainly would have seen all of the mayhem around them. And those whose eyes were opened, they knew that that constituted a day of the Lord. Because what were the days of the Lord in the Old Testament? Because just as with comings, it also mentions many days of the Lord's. They're the same things. And the days of the Lord were always judgments. So the Hebrews, at least those whose eyes were open, they would have understood that in the destruction of Jerusalem, that they were being judged. And it is only recently that we Westerners try to interpret it the way that we think that it should be read. And this is why it's so important to let Scripture interpret Scripture. That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one down below. And if you like my work and would like to become a channel member, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. Or you can just click on it right on my channel page. And I hope you have a great day.